And tonight, the vault is open.
Introduction. A police report used a phrase I've never been able to forget. Evidence of extended habitation in the attic space. That was their way of saying someone had been living up there for months. Eating, sleeping, watching, waiting. The Harlan family had no idea. They cooked dinner every night beneath him. They put their kids to bed in the rooms below him. They argued about homework and laughed at bad jokes. They made plans for next summer, while he listened to every word through the ceiling. And then, one night in November, he came down. I got the case files 2 years after it happened. A source inside the department reached out to me directly. I've covered a lot of dark material in 12 years of investigative work, but I had to put those files down and walk out of the room twice. This is the story of the Harlan family, what happened to them, and why the person who did it has never been found. Chapter 1. The house on Milford Lane. Clarksburg, West Virginia is a small town in the foothills of the Appalachians. It's the kind of place where people still leave their doors unlocked, where you know your neighbors by name, where a new family moving in is something people notice and talk about. Stephen Harlan moved his family there in the spring of 2019. He was 42nd, worked remotely as a software consultant. His wife Diane was a school librarian. They had 2 kids. Mason was 14. Lily was 9. They chose the house on Milford Lane because it had a big yard. Lily wanted a trampoline. That was the reason. A trampoline. The house was built in 1967, 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, detached garage, and an attic. The attic had a pull-down access panel in the second floor hallway. Washington told the neighbors he planned to turn it into a home office someday. Nobody ever went up there. The neighbors described the Harlan nest the way people always describe families like this, after something terrible has already happened. They were just normal people. The kids were always outside playing. Diane used to wave at me every single morning. Norm, quiet, happy. Here's the thing nobody knew. The property had been sitting empty for 11 months before the Harlanes bought it. The previous owners relocated to Florida after a job change. They left in a hurry. They left some things behind. Old furniture, boxes in the garage, and a sleeping bag in the attic. Police initially assumed the sleeping bag belonged to the previous family. It was locked, set aside. They were wrong. The first sign came 3 weeks after the Harlanes moved in. Mason mentioned it to a friend at school. He kept waking up at night because of sounds above his bedroom, not outside, not the walls, directly above him, slow, deliberate, like footsteps. His parents told him it was probably squirrels. Old houses do that. Mason said it didn't sound like squirrels. It sounded like someone trying very hard not to be heard at all. His parents didn't check the attic. They told him to stop watching scary videos before bed. That was June. By August, Diane Harlan started noticing food going missing. Small amounts, never obvious enough to be sure. A sleeve of crackers, a jar of peanut butter that was emptier than she remembered, a can of soup she was certain she hadn't opened yet. She assumed it was Mason. Teenagers eat everything. She let it go. But then one morning she came downstairs and found something she couldn't explain. A glass, clean, sitting upright in the dish rack next to the sink. She hadn't washed it. Stephen hadn't washed it. The kids were still asleep. She'd been the last one in the kitchen the night before. She was certain of it. She picked it up, held it for a moment, didn't say anything to Stephen. But she called her sister that afternoon. It was just a glass. There was nothing wrong with it. But something felt off, like I'd walked into my own kitchen and didn't recognize it anymore. She didn't check the attic. She told herself she was being ridiculous. There was one more thing. Lily Harlan told her mother something in September. She said she'd woken up in the night and heard someone breathing in the hallway. Not Stephen. Not Mason. Right outside her door. Diane checked. Nobody was there. She told Lily it was a dream and tucked her back in. Lily said it didn't feel like a dream. 3 months later, police found that glass in the attic, along with 16 other items taken from the Harlan kitchen. Crackers still in their sleeve. Tin goods carefully resealed. and a small plastic cup that belonged to Lily. They also found a composition notebook. Black cover, no name on it. Inside were entries, handwritten in small, controlled print, dated from late April all the way through November. Entries describing the Harlan family's daily routine in precise detail. What time Stephen turned on the coffee maker, what time Diane left for work, what time Lily went to sleep, what the family argued about, what made them laugh. Every night, for 7 months, whoever was living in that attic was not just hiding. They were learning this family, building a full picture of who they were, how they moved, what they loved, what they feared. And on the night of November 14th, they decided they knew enough. Chapter to the night of November 14th. I want to be careful here, not because the facts are unclear. The forensic evidence was extensive and well documented. I want to be careful because Diane Harlan was a librarian who loved her job, because Mason thought the sounds in the ceiling were real and nobody believed him, because Lily had just learned to ride her bike without help 3 weeks before this happened. They deserve more than a sequence of events, but you need to understand what investigators walked into. November 14th was a Wednesday. Stephen had ordered pizza that evening. The delivery receipt was still on the kitchen counter. 2 large pizzas, garlic bread, a 2-liter of soda, the kind of order a type of family places when nobody wants to cook. The television in the living room was still on when officers arrived. A nature documentary, something about deep-sea creatures. The volume was lower, the kind of low that means everyone stopped watching and just left it running. Millie's homework was on the kitchen table, a fractions worksheet, half finished. Her pencil had rolled to the edge of the table. It hadn't fallen off. That detail is the one that stays with me. Everything in that house said, these people expected morning. The neighbor directly across the street was a retired schoolteacher named Ruth Calloway. She told investigators she noticed the lights in the Harlan house still on at 3 a.m. She watched from her bedroom window for a few minutes. She found it strange. She didn't call anyone. Her husband told her to come back to bed. She said she didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Mason didn't show up to school. Lily didn't show up to school. Diane didn't show up to work. A colleague of Diane's noticed first. She called the house. No answer. She called Diane's cell phone. No answer. She checked with the school. The kids weren't there either. She drove to Milford Lane at 11:30 a.m. The front door was unlocked. She pushed it open, and then she stopped. She told investigators there was nothing visible from the doorway. The hall looked completely normal. The house looked exactly the way it always did, but the smell was wrong. She stood there for what she described as a very long time. Then she walked back to her car, locked the doors, and called 911. The responding officer entered the house at 11:47 a.m. She found the Harlan family in the living room. I've read the forensic report. I'm not going to describe what he found. What I will tell you is this. The medical examiner placed time of death between 1 and 3 in the morning, while the lights were still on. While Ruth Calloway was awake and watching from across the street, while someone was still inside that house. The officer cleared the ground floor, then the second floor. No first entry, no broken windows, nothing that explained how anyone got in or out without the family knowing. Then he looked up. The attic panel was open, 2 inches, maybe 3, just enough to show it had been disturbed recently. Backup arrived. 3 officers went up. Nobody was there. But the composition notebook was on the floor near the panel. The food items were stacked against the far wall. And in the corner, the sleeping bag. One of the officers reached down and pressed his hand against it. It was still warm. Whoever had lived above that family for 7 months had left through that panel sometime in the last few hours, while the investigation was just beginning below them, and they were never found. Chapter 3. What the investigation found. The FBI joined the case on day 3, not because the local department requested it, because someone in the bureau recognized a pattern. I'll get to that. The forensic team spent 11 days. What they documented in that attic changed the way investigators understood the case entirely. The space was approximately 400 square feet, no ceiling, Insulation on all sides. One small circular vent on the east wall that faced the backyard. Here's what they taglined. The sleeping bag. Standard issue. The kind sold at any sporting goods store. No manufacturer tags. They had been removed, not cut, carefully peeled away. If whoever did this had planned for exactly that possibility. 17 food items from the Harlan kitchen. All chosen specifically because they could be opened and resealed without obvious signs of tampering. A 1.5-liter water bottle, refilled from an unknown source. The bathroom directly below the attic panel showed faint moisture. On the floorboards consisted with someone moving through it repeatedly at night. A small battery-powered lamp. Low output, the kind that produces enough light to read, but not enough to show through the gaps in the attic floor. And then the composition notebook. The FBI analyst who reviewed it said she had processed evidence from over 200 cases in her career. She said the notebook was unlike anything she had encountered before. It wasn't a journal. It wasn't a log. It was something closer to a profile. Not a profile of the house, a profile of each person living in it. Watchman Harlan detailed notes on his work schedule, his phone habits, which calls he took in private, which ones he didn't bother to lower his voice for. There were observations about his emotional state. Stressed this week. Barely spoke at dinner. There were notes about his relationship with his wife, written clinically, like someone studying a specimen. Diane Harlan, her routines, her moods, what she listened to in the kitchen in the mornings. The investigator noted that several entries about Diane were marked, with a small symbol in the margin, a circle with a horizontal line through it. Nobody could determine what it meant. Mason, his sleep patterns, what time his light went off, how long he lay awake. There were 3 separate entries about the night. Mason heard the footsteps and told his parents. All 3 entries were gone. Analytical. One of them said this. He knows. Doesn't matter. Lily, she had the fewest entries. Not the last page of the notebook was dedicated entirely to her. A single paragraph. No date. The FBI redacted that paragraph before releasing the files to the department. I never saw it. My source told me that 2 of the analysts who read it requested to be removed from the case. I've thought about what was in that paragraph for 2 years. I've decided I don't want to know. Now the pattern. 3 months before the Harlan case, the family in rural Ohio experienced something similar. A family of 4, 2 adults, 2 children, house in an isolated area. They survived. They left the house after the father discovered signs of intrusion in a crawl space beneath the kitchen. He never saw anyone. They relocated. The case was investigated locally and eventually classified as a suspected squatter situation. Nobody connected it to anything larger. 2 months after the Harlan case, a couple in northern Kentucky reported that someone had been living inside the walls of their farmhouse. They found a narrow passage behind a false panel in the basement. Food, water, a flashlight. The couple had 2 young children. They had been living there for 3 months before discovering it. They found the passage because the husband noticed one morning that his daughter's bedroom door had been moved. Not opened, just shifted slightly, as if someone had placed their hand on it. And then thought better of going further. That family also relocated. They didn't press charges because there was nobody to charge. The FBI cross-referenced these cases in the spring of 2020. They found 2 more. 1 in Tennessee, 1 in western Pennsylvania. All families, all isolated, or semi-rural locations, all with some form of attic crawl space or concealed access, all with children. In 4 of the 5 cases, the family reported hearing sounds they couldn't explain, sounds that were dismissed. In the Harlan case, it wasn't dismissed. It was just too late. The FBI has not publicly confirmed these cases are linked. My source told me they believe they are. They believe this has been happening for years, possibly longer than anyone is willing to say on record. They have no suspect, no consistent physical description, no name. What they have is a methodology, careful, invisible, and a composition notebook that tells you, this person doesn't choose houses, they choose families. Chapter for the thing the evidence can't explain. I want to tell you something that took me a long time to admit. I went back to Milford Lane. Not for the story. I'd already written most of it by then. But one thing that didn't fit the methodology. The patience. The control. The months of careful observation. The glass. Diane Harlan found a clean glass in her dish rack on a morning when nobody had washed it. It appeared in the attic inventory, one of the 17 items taken from the kitchen. But here's what the inventory report noted that nobody talked about at the time. The glass had been washed recently. The interior showed traces of dish soap residue, not Harlan family dish. The brand they used was documented and tested. The residue inside the glass was from a different brand entirely. Someone had taken that glass downstairs in the middle of the night, washed it with soap they had brought with them, dried it, placed it carefully in the dish rack, and then gone back up to the attic. This wasn't a mistake. Nothing about this case involved mistakes. Every other detail shows someone who calculated everything, down to the type of food that wouldn't leave evidence, down to the lamp wattage, down to the removed tags on the sleeping bag. The glass was intentional. I've talked to two criminal psychologists about this. Neither of them wanted to be named. Both gave me the same answer. It was a message, not to investigators, not to the public, to Diane. Whoever was living above that family wanted her. Not all at once, not in a way she could prove or explain, just enough to make her feel it, to create that specific kind of dread that lies in the space between what you know and what you can't prove. They wanted the fear to start before anything else happened. And then one of the psychologists said, something I've been turning over in my mind ever since. This level of psychological precision doesn't develop overnight. This person has done this before, many times, and they've gotten better at it. Better. The cases the FBI identified suggest a pattern stretching back at least 7 years. They've confirmed families who heard something, saw something, felt something, and told themselves they were being paranoid. Here's what I keep coming back to. The Ohio family survived. The Kentucky couple survived. In both cases, the intrusion was discovered before November, before winter set in, before whatever timeline this person operates on reached its endpoint. The Harlan family was discovered in November. I went back through the other cases, the 2 cases from Tennessee, Western Pennsylvania, that the FBI flagged. Both happened in October and November. There's a season to this. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything at all. But I've been doing this long enough to know that patterns don't appear by accident. Whoever this person is, they are patient in a way that most human beings. They can live 6 inches above a sleeping family for months and feel nothing that compels them to act before they're ready. That's not impulse. That's not desperation. That's something I don't have a clean word for. The house on Milford Lane was sold 18 months after the case went cold. The new owners were not told about the attic. Technically, they didn't have to be. I looked up the legal precedent. I thought about that family a lot. Moving, putting their kids to bed in those rooms. I drove past the house the afternoon I went back. I sat in my car on the opposite side of the street. Right where Ruth Calloway could see me, she looked out her window. I don't know how long I sat there. I kept looking at the second floor, at the small circular vent on the east side, the one that faced the backyard. And I thought, if someone was up there right now, looking out through that vent, we would never know. Outro. The Sherling case remains open. The FBI has not named a suspect. The composition notebook is still in evidence. The 5 linked cases have not been officially acknowledged as connected. Ruth Calloway still lives across the street. She told a local journalist in 2021 that she replaced all her window locks, that she keeps her lights off at night so she can see outside without being seen. She said she still doesn't sleep well. Mason had told his parents something was up there. He was 40. He described the sounds perfectly. Slow, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. Nobody checked. I don't say that to blame them. I say it because I want you to hear something. Really, he read. If someone in your house tells you something feels wrong, take it seriously. Check the spaces you never check. The attic, the crawl space, the basement corner you've been meaning to clear out for 2 years. The Harlan family didn't get the chance to be wrong. I hope you do. If this case means anything to you, share it. Not because of the numbers, because this case is still open. The more people who know about it, the more pressure exists to keep looking. Subscribe to William's Vault. New cases every week. Some of them are going to be harder to heal than this one. I'll see you in the next one.
Tonight's file is closed, but the secrets below never sleep. Subscribe to hold the key to your return. And now, the vault is closed.